The unofficial start of spring training and the baseball season starts today. We'll tell you about that. More of a breakdown on who the Brewers got in that Corbin Burnes trade. They sign a reliever who's going to be a starter. All that coming up here on this edition of Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is truck day at AmFam Field. Bright and early this morning at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday, the trucks backed into AmFam Field and they began loading up all the baseballs, the jerseys, the bubble gum, everything needed to haul down to spring training and begin it next week. Thursday, spring training is supposed to open the day after Valentine's Day on the 15th. Players will get in there early. I mean, you'll probably see players get there Monday or Tuesday, maybe earlier. Get the lay of the land. Some of them can't wait to get out of the house and get going again. Especially those who need, medical assistance and all that with some of the injuries that they suffer. Nonetheless, today, with those trucks getting packed up, well, the TV cameras down there, and they're all day packing those trucks, that would be fun. I'm not much for long distance traveling and all that. I don't even like driving from Milwaukee to Eau Claire. It's such a long trip. I don't like being in the car for 3.5 hours. We'll do what you have to, but that would be kind of cool, being the guy having to take all the equipment from Milwaukee all the way down to Phoenix, Arizona, as long as I don't have to unpack and unpack it. There we go. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Good to have you along, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Google, Spotify, Apple, we're on all the major downloads. And of course, you get me on YouTube, our Locked On Brewers on YouTube. Search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That alert you every time we drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers. Thank you, everybody who continues to join us, and follow me on Twitter as well. Chuck Freeman. I should put that tag up there, right there. Chuck Freeman. Those of you watching me on YouTube, FREIMUND. Coming up on the show today, talk about Jakob Junis joining the Brewers. A little move that was made last night, the announcement being made. A little bit more on DL Hall and Joey Ortiz, who the Brewers picked up in the Corbin Burnes deal. The Bobby Witt move, how that is good for markets like Milwaukee with Kansas City. Some of you have been asking about that back wall. We'll see if we have a chance to get to that as well. Meanwhile, this show is always brought to you our great sponsors here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. And FanDuel, new customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets. If your first bet is $5 or more and it wins, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. All right. Yeah, the truck day kind of gets me excited. I've never gone down there. The media is invited, but I've not gone down there. What am I going to do? Take some video with my phone? No. But to me, it just kind of gets the blood boiling that, spring training is here. It's been a quick off season. I think it has. I feel like Thanksgiving was just here. We were just talking about the day after Thanksgiving when the Brewers decided that Brandon Woodruff was no longer going to be a part of this team. And they moved on. And that was like 3 weeks after the baseball season ended. And that was Thanksgiving. But I feel we breezed through this winter. Yeah, there's been some maybe because of the weather in Wisconsin too, has been pretty mild. The news pretty much has been uneventful, unless the last couple of weeks you want to include that with Corbin Burnes getting traded and then them signing Rhys Hoskins in a move I never thought they'd ever make. But yeah, quiet off season, quick off season, but it's time to get the spring training. I check out the Brewers schedule every day. I go to the Brewers schedule because I'm still debating on that 20-game package. My kid, my 12-year-old, is going to be playing lacrosse instead of Little League. He can do what he wants. It pains me a little bit that he's not choosing baseball because he's such a good player. And, I'm a baseball kind of guy. So we'll have to work around his schedule. But I checked, and, I love the club section up at AmFam Field. Still might go in that direction, although I've gone to the Gametime app, as I told you, and I've got great tickets in the past. So I'm still trying to decide on that. But I look at the Brewers' schedule every day. I do. I see they have a lot of road games in April. I want to make some road trips. I want to go down to St. Louis this year. I want to go to Cincinnati. I'm back and forth of whether or not I want to be optimistic about this season. When the Pecota ratings don't do anything. That's just fun things to talk about. Don't put, these preseason rankings and the power rankings and all that. Don't put a lot of credence into that. Like when they pick the Brewers, Vegas picks the Brewers for 80 wins. They're setting a number there. I get it. But who knows until you really get on the field. There's been so many surprises and disappointments. I mean, who thought the Cardinals were going to finish where they did last year? Get off to a slow start and never recover. So I just hope that's not us. Been down that road before. Don't want to go back. Like I said, I'm not ready with this winning that the Brewers have done in the last few years. And some can say, well, they haven't done much in the postseason. Yeah, but we've had fun summers. Last year's team, at times it wasn't fun because they weren't scoring a lot of runs. And when they would win games, they get by in the skin of their teeth. Okay, there was a nice little run they made in August where they started to show some signs offensively. But God, I'd hate for this team to get off like the 7-20 start and bury themselves like the Cardinals did last year. And in this division, it's wide open. I still think it's wide open. Even though the Brewers might not pick, I still think the division is wide open. But they need to get off to a quick start. Need to get it for us, for our sakes. They cannot. And I feel like the Brewers mostly get off to decent starts. They get off to a decent start, and I can see that happening. My concern is with the starting staff. I think a lot of you guys out there. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. We come back from this quick break. We'll talk about the Pecota ratings, Junis, how that factors in, and the newest additions to the Milwaukee Brewers. And the Brewers did make a deal, a slight deal. We'll talk about that as well. eBay Motors is there. I should say FanDuel. Let's get the FanDuel here. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book for a reason. Happy Super Bowl week to all you out there. And FanDuel says, hey, come aboard. We're America's #1 sports book for a reason. They have all the props on there. Hey, I've been telling you, McCaffrey scoring the first touchdown. I'd like that. And the over on Kelsey receiving yards is another one I like. He's been going over in all these postseason games, receiving yards. That's a couple of tips there from your boy Freems here. But grabbing your favorite football snacks, placing some super bets this Super Sunday, why not do it? They have all the props there. And, of course, the line, the over and unders, the live bets, who's going to score the first touchdown, the coin flip, all that. New customers, join today at FanDuel. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins on any sport. On any sport, college basketball, going all day on Saturdays and Sundays as well. New customers, again, $200 in bonus bets if your first bet is $500. If your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make it every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll come right back after this timeout. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers. Welcome back to the Locked On Brewers. Chuck Freeman, your host here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. The Pecota ratings are out, baseball perspective, and these Pecota ratings, they're based on past performance. They try to project the most likely outcome for the following season. Looks at all the numbers that make up the numbers to see which players could repeat their success or failures and which one benefited from good fortune. This is just a fun little projection, the Pecota ratings. And they have right now St. Louis with 86 wins, Cincinnati, or I should say Chicago, the Cubs with 80 wins, the Brewers with 79. Brewers are picked for third place, according to Pecota. Cincinnati, 78. Well, I still think is the best team in the division right now. Pittsburgh at 73. Pecota does not think much of the trade. In fact, seems like the Brewers might have taken a hit a little bit with that Burns trade. They've gone down in Vegas numbers I've seen. This Pecota doesn't think much of the Brewers outfield outside of Christian Yelich. And basically looks at the Brewers as having a weak lineup, which we all do, kind of, right? Except for a couple of guys in that lineup, especially the bottom part of the lineup. Last year, that was the case. I mean, there were times none of the guys could hit, but especially you looked at the bottom 5 of the order and you said, wow, 203, 205, 207, 219. It's like, how are we in first place? I hope we're not at that situation again this year, but we might be having to rely on the pitching staff. But Pecota's got them with 79 and 83. That's their record that they've projected. That came out today, the Pecota ratings. Again, take it with a grain of salt. Don't get too excited about it. Excited in a bad way, because I know a lot of you out there, a lot of you think the Brewers are getting screwed by Vegas and baseball projections and all with the 79 wins. I don't know. I think they're right around that. They're right around that. I was on the Bill Michaels show the other day. He thought 87 wins. I thought that might be a little high, but who knows? They hang in the race. They make a couple of additions. I still think the first base spot is something that needed to be addressed in the offseason. And right now, they might have done that with Ortiz. We'll see how Pat Murphy plans and when Murphy sits down with the media down in spring training, we'll get an idea of what Murphy wants to do and who's competing for what position. But if you put Ortiz at third base, who they got in the Burns deal, I mean, you got it defensively. You can't complain about that. It's one of your best infields in baseball defensively. I'm talking third to second. Ortiz at third, Adames at second, and Turang at Adames at short, Turang at second. That's pretty solid right there. That's a pretty solid infield defensively. Now, can they hit? Can Ortiz and Turang hit and Adames bounce back from the season he had last year, at least offensively, not counting the home runs that he hit? But Ortiz is getting some rave reviews as far as defensively. So one scout there on Twitter was quoted as calling him an A+++ defender. Great. Hey, nothing wrong with that. Just want to see if you can hit a little bit. That's always good. That's always good. And Hall, DL Hall, it sounds like the Brewers want him to be a starter. He mostly pitched out of the bullpen with the Orioles last year and was fine. So they're bringing him in to be a starter. And obviously, with Burns gone, there's a starter spot to be had. DL Hall is going to get his crack as a starter for the Milwaukee Brewers, the lefty. So we'll see how that goes. Assuming everybody stays healthy and all that, DL Hall will compete for a starter spot in that rotation. He'll wear number 37. When these guys are assigned numbers, when these new players are assigned numbers, or a player who's traded here is assigned numbers, my mind automatically flashed back to somebody. Now, DL Hall, number 37, first guy I think of, Dan Plesac, 3-time All-Star from 87 through 89. Dan Plesac. Ortiz was assigned at number 3. Who do I think of right away? Not Jerry Royster, who lost 108 games with the help of Davey Lopes, or 106 games back in 2002, I want to say. I think of Ned Yost, who was number 5 as a player, number 3 as a manager here. So Ortiz wore 3. Juan Castillo wore number 3 too, as I recall. Gorman Thomas back in the 70s before, wasn't Gorman 3? He was 44. No, he was never 40. Well, he's 44 when he first got here. And then Henry Aaron came aboard. And Aaron took 44. I think Gorman went down to 3 and then later became number 20. I think that's how it went. So that's the plans. DL Hall to be a starter. And Ortiz, we don't know about. I'm assuming competing for a third base spot. Unless Adames, I still have a feeling that Adames could get traded. Still have a gut feeling that Adames could be traded. But what an infield that would be defensively. Ortiz, Adames, Turang, still got to be able to hit a little. Zach Greinke is still out there for the taking. Wants to play a 21st year. Somebody will invite him in. Somebody will invite him into camp, even though he had a bad season last year. And some guys, these guys don't want to retire. They want to keep playing because they feel to, or maybe they need the money. I don't know what the case is with Zach, but some guys just like being around the guys. They go home thinking, oh, retirement is going to be great. And then they get home and realize they got to deal with the kids and the wife and all that. And they think, oh boy, it was surely fun going on those road trips. But I don't know what Greinke's deal, but he wants to play, and more power to him. You know, if you want to still be around the guys, still play, somebody's going to invite him in. Haven't done it yet, but they'll get him at a good price and to bring him in. I'd still kick the tires on Zach Greinke. I think some of you guys put that out there on Twitter a couple of months ago. We're dead against it. Ethan Small, I'm always disappointed when the Brewers have to trade a high draft pick or they DFA somebody. In this case, they did DFA him. There must have been some interest out there because they ended up, usually when you DFA a guy, you're done. No trade, nothing. But they sent him to San Francisco for cash considerations. Well, they got a couple of bucks out of the deal. And what did the Brewers do? Not with this money for Ethan Small, but I imagine some of the money that they saved with Corbin Burnes, they signed Jakob Junis. I like this move. We'll get to that coming up next. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. And of course, the folks over at, I pushed the wrong one here, at eBay Motors. I told you I love myself some eBay. I go to lie in bed at night after done checking Brewers Twitter and Twitter in general. I look at eBay Motors and I look on eBay and see what's out there. eBay, if you have a passion for your car, like a lot of you guys do, and you're in your garage year-round, maybe you have a heated garage, you're looking to fix a thing or two, eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle. Level it up to peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, all this. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has got you covered. 122 million parts. Your number one ride and die should be exactly how you want it. And if you need a part or two, eBay Motors guaranteed fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into an MVP, bring home that win. You never go wrong with eBay. Keep your ride or die alive with ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Guy down the street told me, saw this podcast last September, said he went to eBay Motors, and he's done it 4 or 5 times. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Keep that in mind. But eBay Motors, you want eBay, again, some of you guys are fixing your car in the winter in Wisconsin with your heated garages and all that. More power to you, but go to eBay Motors and find what you need. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. We're going to be here a lot coming up here. You know, we're here 3 times a week during the off season, but we're going to try to be here daily, providing you with updated news, because spring training is coming up next Thursday. There's going to be news to be had every day with the Milwaukee Brewers, forming our team, getting our team ready for the postseason, the regular season, and spring training. Hopefully postseason. We'll come right back after this time out here on Locked On Brewers. Welcome back to Locked On Brewers. Chuck Freeman, your host. You see this back wall? A lot of you have been asking about this back wall here in my studio, my home studio. I have another wall over here, history of all the games I've covered. We get a chance, I'll get into some of that right there for some of you who are watching this on YouTube. But Jakob Junis, who has spent time with Kansas City and San Francisco, 1 year, $7 million. This move kind of came out of nowhere. Did they overpay him? 1 year, $7 million. I was like, that seems a little odd for this guy. He had an ERA in the mid-3s last year. Wicked slider. Of course, when you go to YouTube, you're going to get all the highlights. Okay, you're never going to get the bad performance. Like Junis gets rocked for 15 runs. Not saying that happened, but you're not going to see that. You're going to see all the good things. You're going to see all the highlights. You're going to see that slider drop right off the table. I saw that. Yeah, something you can work with here. He's going to have a chance to compete for a starter spot in the rotation. And if he doesn't win a starter spot, he's a good arm to have out of the bullpen. Make a strength even stronger with that bullpen. That bullpen looks fully stocked right now, but I think they signed him to be a part of the rotation, it sounds like. So he'll compete for a rotation spot. But you got all these arms. You got all these good arms. You got guys. You don't have a standout number one starter, an ace. Freddie's going to get it by default. That kind of concerns me a little bit. But all these other arms you have out of the bullpen, I think Peguero is going to take a little step up this year. See how Uribe continues his repertoire. We know he throws 100. We'll see who the eighth inning guys is leading up to our closer, Devin Williams. A lot of arms out there. So Junis signing him 1 year, $7 million. Again, this move a little surprised me a little bit, and I was mildly surprised that they had to pay that much for him, but that's okay. A little under the radar move, but this one could be one that benefits him. Again, he's got some good stuff. Junis does. I liked him when he was with the Royals. Liked him in San Francisco. 36 appearances, 40. He made 40 appearances, 36 out of the bullpen last year. So mostly used out of the bullpen. Sounds like he'll be a starter here. The Bobby Witt deal, I love that Kansas City's keeping him. Signed him this, $11 million, $288 million, I thought. 11-year, $288 million. I love that because you shouldn't have to worry about losing your star if you're a small market like Kansas City or Milwaukee. Okay? I like this. I like it. Bobby Witt staying there. And the breakdown of the deal, there's some guaranteed and a lot of it guaranteed and money backloaded, front loaded. Bottom line is there's an 11-year commitment to one of their future standout players with the Kansas City Royals. And the Royals have had some good players come through over the years. They just not have been able to put it together as a team since those World Series days about 10 years ago. But yeah, good for small markets like this. And just like with the Brewers with Jackson Chourio. And I saw the Journal Sentinel put out its 5 keys to spring training or things to watch out for spring training. I'll be putting my own out here in the next couple of days on things to watch for in spring training and things I'm keeping an eye on in spring training. So we'll get to that. This wall in back of me, and if you guys are listening to the audio version, I won't get into too details. This wall in back of me, I have a wall. Please go to YouTube. Search Locked On Brewers on YouTube and follow our video version, even if it's for this right here. I got game programs up there. I have all the managers in Brewers history, although I don't think I do have Renee Latchman way at the end up there. See Renee Latchman, who was here in 1 year in 84. And you got Harvey Keene, who helped lead us to our only World Series. Bambi's Bombers are up there. Gorman, yearbook from 1979, way up here. Del Crandall was the manager in the early 70s. Alex Grammas. I got some postseason programs up there. I don't think they're making programs anymore. I think we're doing away with the program. I was trying to look for a 2021 NBA Finals program when the Bucks were there. I never picked one up, and they never made one. So I think the days of programs and yearbooks might be going out the window. The Brewers have still produced a yearbook, but that might be, the days of collecting yearbooks and programs and all that, which I have Sports Illustrated. I have my Brewers Sports Illustrated over here. But those days we found out what Sports Illustrated, what directions they're going, and that's sad. I remember the first time the Brewers were on SI. I have that. I'll bring that in here, one of the coming episodes, when George Bamberger was on the cover in 1978. And yeah, shows him clapping. I think Raleigh Fingers was one in 1981. Brewing Up a Storm, Rob Deere was on when the Brewers won their 12 in a row, with Deere hitting that game-tying home run. But this back wall, I got my press credentials up there from all the playoffs I covered and all that. Over here, my press pin from the 82 World Series, the ALCS, when the Brewers in the American League, when they beat the Angels, and the World Series program from that year as well. And of course, that newspaper up there behind me is when they won the American League pennant, beating the California Angels at the time. And then this right here behind me, the Seattle Post-Intelligencer. Let me say that better. The Seattle Post-Intelligencer. It's the first game ever played by the Seattle Pilots, who were the Pilots for 1 year, and then they moved here. Bud Selig brought about a bankruptcy. But that's opening day. The Seattle goes big league. That's where it all started for the Milwaukee Brewers right there. Opening day in Seattle with the Pilots in 1 year. When you go to AmFam Field, I talked about this. When you go to AmFam Field, you got to check out the C League experience because it talks all about that. And you're not going to leave with a dry eye. I never do, and I've seen it 50 times, and I still, geez, I'm a mess. Not as much as when I first saw it, but man, it's the story of my life watching Brewers baseball. It's going to do it for me, everybody. Hey, I'm a Brewer fan, just like you. They're my favorite team. They are. And I can't wait. Spring training is starting up here in a week. The trucks are leaving, and Brewers baseball. Hey, I don't care where Pecota has them. I don't care where Vegas has got them. I don't care where anybody's predicting the Milwaukee Brewers. They're our team, and we're looking forward to the start of the baseball season and following them along right here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Chuck Freeman. We'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody.